Okay, well, it's a pleasure for us to have Steve Threlfall here with us with his project We Make Places. He comes from the UK collective We Make Places in Liverpool, and he's been developing for a month here this his project Plywood with Soul. He's been doing that with John Garbizu from Todo por la Praxis and with people from the EVA collective, which are Álvaro Yelamo and Ángel Legna. So they're going to explain, they are going to talk, and Steve is going to explain us about his project at Medialab that ends tomorrow. He'll be going back to UK. Okay, so.
Thank you, Sonia. So to explain the project was born out of work that we're doing in Liverpool. So We Make Places is a collective that works with neighbourhoods in the city in terms of working with individuals and communities to enable them to take more control of decisions in the built environment where they live. We also have a project called Urban Workbench, which is based on the edge of one of our neighbourhoods. A workshop with a CNC machine now. And that project emerged actually from the Ideas Camp in Botkyrka in Sweden. I took that idea there along with a total of 50 of us, all of whom are working in communities across Europe. So we're using CNC manufacture as a tool in Liverpool ourselves, but we're using it as a commercial enterprise. Even though we are a social enterprise, we will operate it commercially in order to pay for the work that we do. It will operate for 2 days a week commercially, and the money that it gets from those contracts, many of which have a social purpose, working in social housing, that will pay for the work that we do with communities. And Urban Workbench itself is about using making and construction as a process to connect people. That for us, rather than the object, the process is far more important. So, on to the project here, Contrachapado, con alma. We set ourselves, or I set myself a challenge for the residency, that we would have, using the resources of one sheet of plywood, we would choose 2 neighbourhood-based projects within the city, or with a neighbourhood context, that we would work through a process of exchange and discussion to look at, to really focus on this minimum amount of material to explore what was important. So in the case of EVA, in terms of them as an organisation, to explore objects which would express them and their culture. And in the case of the newcomers, of which Belen is representative, we looked at a group of people that were newcomers to the city with little resources to have objects of their own, to again have that discussion in terms of, if you had this minimum amount of material, what for you would be important, what would reflect the kind of your needs and the activities that are important for you personally. So in terms of this as a project, it's the first, I guess, test in what is going to be a much longer process. The context of this, rather than this is the creative process, wasn't this lovely, and then it stops, is that actually we are serious that both in Liverpool with We Make Places and Madrid with Todo por la Praxis, we're very interested in this technology, or this process of manufacture in terms of how it could make the local manufacture of furniture and objects realistic and affordable. This is a very early part of that process, and our next steps after today and after this process are to to really look at all of the questions, because as I expected, this process for me raises many questions. That's what I guess research does. And what I'd really like to today now with you guys around the table is just explore this first part of the process, really. So, am I asking a question of somebody? Okay. Right. Okay. So I'll explain actually that the objects are behind us here. So the objects with the blue colours are the items of furniture for the newcomers. And so that what they had requested was, the starting point was a table for eating, socialising, working. But in addition to that, somewhere to hang clothes, shelves for objects, a small chair or stool that would later become a side table once you find more furniture. So the idea of this is that it doesn't suddenly fill everything, it's just the first important objects. So yeah, somewhere to hang your things, shelves and small bowls for kind of little objects, jewellery, that kind of thing. This is the maximum amount of material that we could possibly have fit. And also we wanted to make sure that these objects didn't need the process of making holes in walls that most accommodation that people are moving into for the first time would not allow this. And then secondly, Eba's project. Angel, could you describe to me, rather than kind of my words, I'd quite like you to, and in Espanol is fine, to just explain the process, the discussions that you had in the workshop. And so we have a design here, but what were the things that led to this and the other ideas? Because I know that these weren't the only ideas. So if you could explain to us your process together as a group.
Bueno, explicamos el proceso que seguimos, ¿no? Sí. Bueno, estuvimos trabajando con Steve aquí una mañana en una de las salas de Medialab. Digamos que, por un lado, viendo distintos objetos desde diferentes perspectivas, distintos objetos diseñados con esta máquina, que no acabo de recordar nunca cómo se llama, CNC, y explorando también diferentes ideas alrededor de algo que también estaba en la mente de Eva, que era la idea de la biblioteca o de la biblioteca de Eva, pues no solo como un espacio específico dentro del espacio, sino como una idea de desarrollo del espacio, digamos, entendiendo que la biblioteca era más que un lugar, una especie de gran artefacto que ocupaba todo el espacio, ¿no? Estuvimos dándole vueltas sobre estas ideas y imaginándonos también posibilidades diferentes de qué tipo de objetos, dónde podrían estar, cómo se podrían manejar y cómo se podrían articular en el espacio, ¿no? Algunas ideas más difíciles de realizar, otras más sencillas, ¿no? Desde los estanterías que eran a la vez objetos de gimnasio hasta estanterías móviles. Y bueno, ahí yo creo que por ahí se ven algunos de los dibujos que estuvimos haciendo y repensando un poco ese proceso, ¿no? Al final parece que la idea más interesante y a la vez factible de hacer era la idea de buscar algún tipo de objeto que identificara digamos, una especie de estantería biblioteca que persiguiera al lector o que estuviera donde estaba el lector, ¿no? Y de esa idea bueno, surge el modelo actual, que yo creo que Álvaro lo explica más o mejor, que estuvo más en esa segunda parte del proceso.
Yeah, that was the initial idea of the project, because of, one of the main things that we fight for is to improve the society through the knowledge, and through this library that we've working for less than a year, and we were thinking on this idea that the library is not the place, is the place that we can be, or where we can be, and how could it, we ask ourselves if the book can try to find us instead of we find the book. So we had just a week for working, so we had to go to straight lines. So this is something with the design lines that we had to take care, because this just week for working, and also there were another main point is to talk about recycling, and these tires, these bicycle recycle tires appear. When we construct it, we realize that it seems like a jail or like a confessions chair, and that figured us that we were going in a right way, because I think it was one point that Steve gave us during all the job. It is humor, and it was a final thing of the design work that tell us that we were on the way, and it's easy to take, it's difficult to run with. It's important here, and now we are talking in our collective about where are we going to put this chair. And the first thing that appeared was in the library, but as we were talking, we were discussing in the collective, and we tell them that the idea was this, trying to find the people who's going to read it, not the other side. And here we have that object, and this object will try to get people, not the people is going to the object. So this might be on the Legacy Square, maybe. Could be a nice place, and also I think the most important thing of the job of this working time was to understand the way these tools work, and how easy and how cheap is to manage with this material. So from the last week, now our brain is working on this CNC technology, and I think we'll try to get this technology to ourselves, because it's fundamental. Yeah.
something I observed over the weekend, actually. So one of the things over the weekend that I explored was the whole making process. So once the machine cuts everything, there's still more work to do. And so of the many questions that we have, one of them is, how effective is this? Because this takes a lot of time. And so, for example, to cut the sheet for each of these projects takes, on the equipment here, a minimum of 4 hours. If we cost just the material, it's very affordable. And so one of our questions, which we will explore, I think, with the communities that we will be talking to in Liverpool, Madrid, with you guys included, is how this works, and how, and whether that continues to be a problem or not. It will always kind of take time, but I think there is a longer conversation as to how we can deal with that, not by making the time less, but by making a workshop which is not just one thing. Because one thing which I observed with Alvaro and Ophelia, who were constructing the objects this weekend, because there's still a process of making the surfaces smooth, of putting the items together, of introducing other materials. I think this is, and also of adding colour. I think that, for me, from what I saw and how these guys responded to it, is that I could see that there was more of a connection with the objects. And so I think it's really, for me, I felt it's really important that we need to remember that this isn't just about the magic of the CNC creating these objects, but actually those other parts of the process are kind of, for me, feel really important. As somebody myself who is, as well as the collective, I run a design studio, but I've got back into making objects within the last 5 years, and for me, it's really important for my soul. So I think an important part here is to think beyond the digital kind of technology. So I don't know if either of you guys want to reflect on that. As ever could reflect on it, and then I'll pose a question for Belen also. We have two. Excellent. So my question for you guys would be, so there's an interest in this as a technology. What do you see, I guess, the advantages of having this as one of your resources, if ever had this? What use do you think the CNC machine would be compared to just regular tools?
Bueno, yo conozco parcialmente el proceso, así que es un poco, no sé si tengo una opinión muy precisa, ¿no? Pero lo que entiendo que facilita de alguna manera, por un lado, es el proceso de diseño y la facilidad de realización, ¿no? De montaje final. Y en nuestro caso, eso es un valor añadido, porque de alguna manera lo que para nosotros es interesante desde el punto de vista de un espacio como EVA es la posibilidad de generar objetos y mobiliario y equipamiento que no responda a la lógica convencional, sino a la lógica de experimentación que hay en un espacio como el nuestro, ¿no? De alguna manera no estar como limitados por modelos preestablecidos, sino poder experimentar en formas de articular objetos y mobiliario de manera sencilla, sin necesidad de utilizar los métodos tradicionales, ¿no? Entiendo que esa es un poco la diferencia, ¿no? No sé si... Álvaro.
Yeah, it's continuing what Angel says is these 2 points, is the dialogue and the social knowledge through talking each other, through the design of one object or one thing that as a group can have. And the other one is the other thing that Angel said, that to get to objects that are outside from regular how can you say, regular furniture. I think that's the two main things that at first time. In a second step, this could be a knowledge to share and an opportunity to talk with other communities, and that's the one other thing, the big, huge thing that can bring to us if we can manage this technology.
And just to add a little things, all the things that surround the experimentation and the process, if you make emphasis in processes, so this gives different relationship between people and with other communities. I think this is also a point.
I think kind of certainly reflecting on the work that we do kind of outside of this, always what we would come back to is the process, and first and foremost we have to think beyond the object. We have to think about the positive effect that it might have on one person or a community of people, and something that really, so there were unexpected things for me in terms of the process, and I think in working with Angel, Alvaro and the others within the workshop was that for me, the most exciting thing wasn't the object, it was the discussions that were happening, which you guys spoke about earlier, which were to begin to question what library, what biblioteca means. And that, I think, felt quite powerful. And actually, it's a conversation that neighbourhoods in Liverpool are having kind of right now as well, as a critical thing. I know you guys are something way beyond a biblioteca, but in Liverpool, our public buildings, which are our libraries, are closing because there is no money for them, and which is a problem for communities, not because of the lack of access to books, but because of the connections that they have lost with different generations kind of at the moment. So but that was a really interesting evening. So if I can turn the attention just for a second to you, Bennett, and I know you kind of really helped to coordinate kind of various sessions and kind of pull the group together as the newcomers, but actually you fitted the profile really well as somebody that is, as a young person kind of coming into the city, who is moving into accommodation without personal objects of their own. And actually within this scenario, which I'm interested in, this affects many people in different situations of discovery or crisis, or both. So I'd like you to, if it's okay, to just reflect on, I guess, the process of that evening with you as a group, and just tell us a bit about it.
Okay. I'm happy with the results because that evening we had some discussion about what is a real necessity, and we had a multicultural workshop with people from Colombia, from New York, and from here, from Spain. and it was a really interesting question because we were talking about people who has some family support and with people that has nothing. So there are many situations different that we work with, and I think the result answer to all the topics we talk about because the 3 pieces of furniture and some other objects, I think they answer well to the necessity of a person in this newcomer situation that is coming to a big city to look for opportunities that he or she has in his own town. Well, and another topic I think is very important is what you are talking about, the access to the digital fabrication, and with places like EVA, because I find difficult to search for people who is involved in this kind of process now. Medialab is like one of the places in Madrid who has a fab lab and these processes, and it's a problem for projects like this that not all population know that it exists and know how to access to the digital fabrication. So I think one of the most interesting topics with your project is how it is going to grow and to make another initiatives with EVA and for la praxis and the things we have taught in these days.
And this one will be a briefer question. In terms of because of the process, so this isn't a loaded question, so just tell me the honest answer, is if we compare these objects, so you were involved in the process behind kind of creating and adapting these objects to what they are now, does it feel different to an object which, if you've got a regular chair, a regular table, and somewhere to kind of hang your clothes as pieces of furniture, is there any difference about how you feel about these objects compared to those, and, which is either yes or no, and if it's yes, explain, if it's no, also explain.
I think the most important thing to feel that some furniture or object is important to me is that I have like a connection with this furniture. For example, a chair. I can buy a chair and it's a chair that I like, but I don't have a special history with that chair. But I can go to EVA and participate in a project of digital fabrication and help with some skills and do anything that make the more significant that furniture. Or another thing that I do in this occasion when I don't have an EVA with us in sea or something like that is to recycle furniture in the street. That is like another way of making a special history with the chair or the other furniture.
Yeah, something really good about this city, and I was with you when we found this, what looked like a piano, but it was a giant radio just in the street. I'd love to live here mainly because of the objects that are thrown away. But there's a really good, and at the various recycling points in the streets. There is kind of so much furniture, and so I think in the context of Madrid, as I look at these objects here, what's really good is that this is like a starter pack, and that actually very quickly you'll find chairs, drawers, other things in the street. Liverpool was like this 20 years ago, but not so much now, which I really miss because my first apartment was completely furnished through waste that I picked up. So I think it's important kind of to mix those. And what I really like about the scale of what we've produced here also is that I think you can because it comes apart, and literally I think two people could get into a taxi with this, put it in the back of the taxi and kind of go somewhere. I really like that. But okay. What do we talk about next, John? Or
should maybe make a question to you around the process. So maybe it's going to be two questions. First of all, like as you are the guy launching the experiment, so you might have some expectations or previous ideas, and if you had any around this process, just to ask you which is the thing that has been surprising you the most, or if any of the specific expectations you might have didn't fit. That should be the first question. On the other hand, like you've already been working with Liverpool communities and neighborhoods, so just if you have found any big difference or any big coincidence between both contexts.
Okay, so the first one first, surprises. The first surprise, which I could choose to take as a negative, but I won't, is the amount of time that this took on the machine. The machine here is still quite an expensive and good machine, but it took a minimum of 4 hours per sheet for these objects. And so that was a surprise. So it started to help me think in different ways as to how we take this forward. If this was just a commercial project, a hard commercial project, then I would have to kill it now, wouldn't I? Saying, no, this cannot be sustainable, but I think it can be. I think we view this as part of a collection of tools which will be useful. I think there are ways in which we need responsibility in a workshop, but we don't need somebody to just stand with the machine for those 4 hours. I think it's important that it's part of a collection of other productive things. Other things that I was surprised by, I guess, so coming back to the process with Eva again, actually the importance of just where the conversation went in terms of what we've explored earlier. That was a really kind of positive surprise, and all of these things just for me reinforce processes of communication. Other things. So back into the context of between Liverpool and Madrid. I guess kind of one of my, I think there's a difference in which I kind of suspected initially, which is a big reason why I wanted to do the residence in the city here, is that I feel that there's more energy, power and organisations within neighbourhoods here, where there isn't so much in Liverpool. There are, I guess, kind of neighbourhood organisations, but not as passionate and well organised as you guys are here. And if we look at the map, what was the map? Madrid's map is really. That map. And it's really clear that you guys are kind of really ahead on a journey where that's concerned, and I think there's a lot that I and our collective can kind of take away, and I feel it's essential that we continue a relationship between the two cities, and not just this project. And there was something else that I was going to say, and I can't quite remember it between the two. I think maybe your municipality is a bit braver than ours. Ours needs to wake up. I don't mind telling them that now. I went back to a symposium that we were hosting in Liverpool, of which this was one of the topics, and I was quite sleep deprived, and so more honest than usual, and more honest about the municipality. I think this was a good thing. So I'll continue to deprive myself of sleep, I think, and be honest. One thing I would say here, I think there are things to also kind of pick up from Liverpool and our region. And I think kind of one thing I'd be keen to exchange is the culture of social enterprise. So kind of where individuals and groups of people are creating businesses that solve kind of social needs within those communities, but they're really they're not apologetic in the manner that these are enterprises that do create money, and they do that in order to be able to sustain what they do. And yeah, it made me realise that actually this is one point where we're ahead. There's some really interesting kind of community initiatives run by people that are having, and I'm part of a collective school of that this year actually in Liverpool, and there are some amazing people across the northwest that are doing things, anything from bike maintenance through to counselling, through to running kind of community radio, various things, but they're realising to keep going, we need to be able to generate income. And I don't think this is like a bad thing, and I think this is something I'd like to exchange. In exchange for the many great things you guys have that we don't have as well, I think there's some really interesting conversations beyond the CNC.
It's just like the idea of how, I don't know, maybe you also can answer, the idea of how we're going to have all those social spaces, or maybe Fab Labs with CNCs, for people to be able to go with an idea and have one of these sheets and kind of make it more normal, more common to use this technology. Do you think that this is going to happen, that we are going to have places like EVA with people goes there and just like use a CNC? Or because I would love also you to tell about the different amounts of money that this costs. One, the one you have in Liverpool, the one that you may have at EVA, the one that we have here. So the difference, because it's not so accessible for the moment, huh? And I don't know how you see that.
Yeah, maybe related to this idea of how to facilitate or make it accessible to, like, we have this very short or already like draft idea of, we are talking about neighborhood lab, Fab Lab, which this idea of buying the machine in Vallecas, in our own. It's a thought that we have in mind, and then now taking advantage of the opportunity of sharing with him this starting point phase and thinking about all this. So we haven't thought yet about how this should work. If we are talking about a neighborhood Fab Lab, I could imagine, I'm not able to think about the management around the machine or the space, but what I think that I can anticipate is, or maybe the main objective or desire that I would have around this idea is to really have neighborhood involved in different degrees, but trying to set up and also try to come out with the essential, I'm really finding through this experiment that he just did here, how even though they are quite similar furniture, these slightly differences on thinking around the object from different perspective, how will this take place in neighborhoods? So let's say, imagine in a tropical case, we are having a Fab Lab in Getafe, Leganés, Vallecas, and suddenly we come out with, design label for each neighborhood. I don't know. This is just like weird thoughts around the things, but I'm really interested in that. And on the other hand, how to really encourage people, or how to seduce them to really have this idea of spending time on this, because it's interesting. Also start thinking of what kind of employment lines could arise around these things. So maybe you have kids, well, we have this experience doing just regular wooden workshops. We've been working a lot with kids in Vallecas, and suddenly one of them, that he was kind of lost, academically speaking, he suddenly found his job through the carpenter working or wherever. So in this sense, also try to detect what different profiles we will be finding in this process. Maybe people more technologically engaged, like really thinking around the machine. Then one might have other profiles just really into design, pieces or wherever. Or maybe other ones that they don't really have these skills for space thinking, but they really have cool conceptual ideas about how to use or reuse or things like that. So I think it's a perfect excuse to have a word that Steve likes to repeat a lot: discussions around and conversations around the thing. So I really would like to see how we could be aware, anticipate these different roles that could be arised around these machines in neighborhoods. More or less, I don't know.
I would like to talk about 3 points. We were talking about this machine, right? The cheaper one. We were talking about 3,000 euros, and so this 3,000 euros machine is faster and more fine cut as this one.
These are things I need to investigate. So I know of some. So as an artist fabricator friend of mine in Liverpool has just literally at the same time we've taken delivery of our machine has brought a kit. So at this point there's lots of investigation, and I can't promise that the smaller machines or the cheaper machines will have a cleaner cut or be quicker. These things we need to investigate as they emerge. And yeah, I think in terms of the cleaner cut, I would have to say my opinion is that the tool, the cutting tool, needs to be replaced more often. I think that's the issue here, as to why that is. Our recommendation that we've been given for our machine is every 10 sheets. So there's quite a regular turnover. You know, normally if we use like a drill for kind of tornillos or whatever, you keep using that till it breaks. Yeah. Whereas these, you just like a good razor. You need to kind of replace it regularly. Yeah, it's questions that we need to answer. So I'm totally aware at the beginning of this process that the affordable technical solution is still a big question, but we're very. The most important thing for me, as with John, really was the process first, and we have as I expected, I have a list of many times more questions as I leave here than when I arrived. This is not a surprise. This is kind of what this process is. And so I need to, investigate all of these things. And I'd really like, us all to kind of remain in kind of contact about that. I don't know if that's answered question 1.
This is the Western one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The second one, because of I think one of the most important thing of the project is to create a huge net of people that have these constructor thoughts that is like easy, cheap, understandable for everyone, and easy, and which where or is the next step, your next step, place?
next step for us is to actually repeat this process in Liverpool as well, and compare the kind of the cultural differences, I guess, the context. And yeah, I need to formalize all the questions I leave with here. I need to, I guess, kind of write a report, not just for the sake of writing a report, but to get kind of thoughts and these reflections together, really, and decide what the next kind of process is. Because in the future, I agree there needs to be a network. There needs to be a network of knowledge. I also think there needs to be a network of buying materials. I think it becomes significantly cheaper if you buy 50 sheets compared to one. I think that the kind of collective buying is an important part of this process. But we can't just suddenly go and say, tomorrow we'll try 20 experiments in Madrid, because we need to kind of keep it small. So we need to kind of figure out how we test it kind of before the network, etc. And make it grow. Start small and really focused is kind of what I'm kind of really keen on.
Yeah, also even like we've also talked about, like we are in this process, we are like in the final step that we already have the clean plywood, but also try to think you're already pointing out the recycling processes around how to achieve or how to get proper materials from CNC out of recycled materials, you know, because you can think like on enterprises or maybe smaller, like, you know, more domestic tricks to be able to replace or to clean out these wooden pieces in order to be able to reuse them with CNC. That's quite a good issue also to start to think about, and also all the different elements that can be combined with this CNC production, also how they could be somehow recycled. You have the example of the bicycle tires, but we could think about plenty of clothing or all the things that could come out of these things. So that's why I find very interesting, you know, like if we think about similar processes for self-management, production, or whatever, you know, we have plenty of projects, good examples, many things, but this idea of start just thinking in one plywood or so, in a sense of try to limit the discussion around the theme, I think is very interesting, and it's going to be the theme that the idea of having this process this way, it lets you to control the things that are coming over the process. So you start with these simple sheets, then maybe the next workshop will be thinking in 100 sheets of plywood by 1,000 people. I don't know. You know, could be the next step. I don't know.
Yeah, to some degrees, it's the people who are. So some of it are things that we test, but most important really is going to be kind of next steps also from the communities that we're working with, including kind of you guys, as to what it is. I agree with John, and I think there's certainly the stuff with the bicycle tyres has highlighted that this isn't a standalone process. And I think it also, as you look at more textiles and more recycled materials, it invites other people to get involved, I think, as well. Not just the people who design or know about the machine, but other people who get into the process. I think kind of that's a really important thing. So I feel that there'll be certain products where actually the CNC bit might be a minimum part of it. So there are various ways as to, I think there are many different ways to work with it. So this is a different process. So say, for example, we think of the projects in China to 3D print a concrete house. It's like, there's your house from the machine. We want to be kind of more subtle than that in terms of how we control the technology rather than allow it to kind of control us. Certainly looking at recycled resources is really interesting. Christian, who's not here today, who was like a key part of discussions offline, has, with Microbiblioteca, been doing a system which is actually perfect for CNC, but he's been doing it by hand and with recycled storage cartons. That kind of thing is I think some of that is working with communities to co-source now where we can get materials. One thing to be really careful of though is that if there are any metal objects within the material, it can destroy parts of your machine. So yeah, but I think it's very valid, is that making things affordable is to look at upcycling as well. And I think very important, which I've said a few times, is that I think I see this as part of a wider kit. And I think that's something for me in my head that this has kind of taken shape actually over these last few weeks, is that this isn't just like a building with one of these in. It's a building with a whole load of resources which are mixed. I think that is really, really important, not to be kind of led by this as some kind of solution to everything. But I think that's really positive. I think all of this, for me, as long as it gets to really engage people, that's what matters.
And just two last ideas. Just to have it clear, so you said that you bought the machine through a collective, and then you use 2 days per week for commercial works, and then the other time, okay, just to know to export, or maybe
Sure.
to our collective, because it could be something new for us to work in these terms. And another question that I made this weekend is where were the kids or the guys who made or thought the furniture? Because one of the main things of this workshop was the process, and I would like to know the other guys who were involved in this table.
Okay. You mean after today?
No,
Or now?
before. Yeah, the days that this was built, the table, the other part of the workshop where the guys for construct the table. Do I explain myself clearly? No.
Possibly. Do you think it's something you can answer, Belen?
¿Dónde estaban los chicos del caso? No, se supone que habían pensado con los chavales que objetos... Sí, perdón, que estoy preguntando que he echado en falta a los chicos que estuvieron pensando en el proyecto, en el otro, a la hora de construirlo, porque es otro momento en el que se crece, ¿no? como persona, que es parte de, creo que, lo interesante del proyecto, como persona y como colectivo, ¿no? Y creo que es otra de las partes importantes en las que se debe involucrar a los que participan del Este. Entonces, si era por algo decidido, si ha sido por recursos o...
We had few days for organize it. Like it was bastante improvisado. Bueno. And I think day 3, leave Madrid. The next day we made the workshop. So they wanted to participate, but no, they can't, because your residence has been so intense. and intense and but quick, so we can do it.
Okay, so in terms of how is it sustainable, no? You say that in We Make Places, as Alvaro said, you have your CNC, and for 2 days a week, you use it as a commercial manufacturer, so that makes you be sustainable with your We Make Places association. So how do you see that in Madrid? How would we do that? Or another question together with this one. I've heard that, for instance, in Italy, every town has a Fab Lab, or maybe every city has many Fab Labs, and they have CNC. So how do they do? How do they make it sustainable to have it so many machines and people using these Fab Labs all over? How do they do it to make that work?
I think
they take money.
I think it's something we don't have the answers for yet. I think this is one model. I think there will be a number of models to explore in terms of how this pays for itself. I know the Fab Labs that I've known locally in the UK have really struggled, and one of them, a couple of things I would say, they've really struggled. One, I have a real issue with the one in Liverpool, which is within a university which the public can't even access. Well, I find that's ridiculous. It survives because the university consumes it. Others, I think, have struggled because they're not really making their income. There is a really good independent one, quite like Makerspace, which makes its money through memberships, but I don't think we're looking at this model. One of the things I think about Fab Labs, and I don't necessarily say that about Medialab, I think Medialab is unique in a way to the ones I'm talking about. I don't find them very accessible in terms of their, well, not many people know about them, and they, I guess, attract a certain kind of person that's probably very technically minded or obsessed. And to a degree, that is the kind of thing I see through Makerspace. This is something different. This is a workshop. This is a community workshop. This is one of the tools in it. I think kind of that's kind of where it is. And what the model is, I think, is something we need to explore through dialogue. We can talk about what we're doing, and we can share examples. But I don't think there's like a one flat answer yet. I don't know how many will arise. I don't know, John, whether you've some thoughts on that?
I was thinking, like, also, always depending on the returns that you are going to be having with the machine, that we could also, like, why not apply directly for public foundation if the project might have any kind of return. But we have to forget about asking money to our father one more time. Maybe just in terms of, you know, applying for the administration for money. I think that this both, like, commercial production line and regular social developments around the project could be something that could work together. And also, we are also thinking about training, some kind of learning experience around the manufacturing, and then trying to set, like, sort of like a scholarship inside the production process. We'll try to find which are the returns of the thing. We could also think on crowdfunding. Why not? At some point, maybe if people are interested in, as a community, on having their own machine, why not? One, they've already have known that it's a process that is working well, that it's already tested, that the things are like makes sense to do this investment. So by now, starting with these lower scale ideas and try to see, like, I don't see very expensive to rent for 50,000 euros machine. A couple of years is making lamps. Or doing luxury mobiliary for rich people also could be a good idea.
Yeah.
Just saying that here in Medialab or in many meetings here in Madrid, that whenever the official thing is about to finish and you have forgotten anything, so we'll continue in the bar with other thoughts or ideas or whatever we come out with.
Yeah, I think, for example, if ever in Madrid are kind of interested in kind of going forward, I think to, in a sense, rather than us kind of say, well, kind of these are other models, it's like, I guess the feedback as to, given how many great things these guys are doing already within the organisation, I think there's the power within that kind of community to kind of come back and tell us, really, and then we can do some kind of co-investigation as to what's necessary next. I think that's it. Yeah. And I certainly agree in kind of John's thinking about the school, that I think there needs to be like you've got a number of different actors within this process, I think, and that those skills need to be imparted. Not something that takes 3 years of training, something which is much more intense and delightful than that, I think. But yeah, other than that.
Also about like the low scale of this system. Like I was all the time like, maybe okay, you guys don't have the machine, but you could just buy unscaled carton sheets and start to prototype, or maybe even use advantage of 3D printers, or maybe to short. Well, you've seen all over the place all these small. That also has this idea of that you can be working like out of them, like far away from the machine, but that many things can continue going on. So that could be another nice field to explore, because then it's true that you have to really build in real shape to see if it fits and if it weights and if it's stable and things like that. But to start playing around, you could have even a workshop with kids, just, with a sheet of paper and try to make shapes around this, and let's see how we match them together, what kind of prototypes we can come out with out of these, small scale projects.
Yeah, always get kids involved. Kids are amazing. The most successful, so I've designed probably within a 5-year period about 40 schools, but I don't want to go back there. But the most successful in terms of the spaces that were created where kids were allowed into the process, and you have there an amazing resource of people that are not held back by kind of traditions or the way things are done. Get kids in. Kids are awesome. A song now.
That we can finish the round table here. So thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much, Álvaro, Belén, John, and Angel. Okay, so we'll continue to have contact with Liverpool and with you, and to see what has this project, how has this evolved at Liverpool. And you also wanted to make all the differences, no, between the communities here and the communities at Liverpool. So I guess you'll give us feedback about what is going on from this. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Dime. No, yo pensaba que incluso, vamos, que igual si os queréis llevar ahora las cosas... no, ¿cuál? ¿La silla? ¿Te refieres a esto? ¿Solo la silla?
No, el otro.
Ah, por eso. ¿Aquello no?
Esto es de los chicos.
Vale.
What's going to happen with the outfits of the blue ones?
I don't know what we're going to do with these.
Well, the idea was maybe, no, because we would love to have an exhibition maybe, but in the future, because right now we just like have 1 month, 15 days until the end of July, and not many people is coming around, and then it's August. So maybe, I don't know, in September, October, we could have them back and we could talk about that. But now if you want to leave, well, this is going to EVA, yes, and this, I don't know. But we are happy to if no one wants it, then I'm very happy to have it. Yeah, we're happy to have it here, yeah, why not?
Just to know that it's not going to be rubbish or something.
No, come on, rubbish. No, not at all.
I don't know when you're going to have.
Because you would use transport to take it there. Because that's not. This can go in a car. We don't need a special. Yeah, no. And can it be unfold? No. It's easily unfold, desmontado. No. Ni se te ocurra.